Watermelon sugar.
Let's talk about a girl who spent 44 days in hell. Her name is Junko Furuta, and she was 16 years old at the time. She was very popular at school because of her beauty, but not only that, she was extremely book smart. She was a straight A student. One day while at school, a boy who was affiliated with a very dangerous gang asked her out, and she rejected him. He took the rejection to heart, and he set up a plan to kidnap her with his friends. The kidnapping was successful, and they took Junko back to one of the houses that the boy's parents owned. 2 days after her missing, her family put in a missing persons report. Everybody in Japan was looking for her. So the boys made her call her parents and tell them that she was safe and that she was just with a friend. The parents that owned the house knew that Junko was there, but they were paid hush money to stay silent, as well as they were scared to say anything to the police because they knew what the boys were capable of. Things are about to get graphic, so this is your chance to scroll away. They kept her naked for most of the time to humiliate her. They took turns raping her. She was raped by more than 100 men, more than 500 times. And one time there was a day where she was raped 12 times back to back. Most of the time after they were finished doing that to her, they would often pee on her. They would smash her face into cement and beat her with golf clubs. They would make her touch herself in front of the men to turn them on before they would rape her. They would stick all sorts of crazy objects inside of her, from scissors, needles, iron rods, and one time there was a hot light bulb that they forced inside of her and twisted it around until it popped inside of her. Sometimes they would grab fireworks and shove them up her butt and light them. Other times they would have a big weight and drop them on her stomach while her hands are tied above her head. They would tie her from the ceiling and punch her like she was a punching bag. During this time it was winter and below freezing, so they would make her sleep outside on the balcony. They would burn her eyelids with hot wax, and they even crushed her hands so much that she couldn't hold anything. It would take her about an hour to crawl downstairs just to use the restroom. She was severely dehydrated and malnourished because of the fact that she couldn't eat, and whenever she did, she would throw it up because her organs were so damaged. Her suffering came to an end when she won a game against the boys, and they put lighter fluid all over her face, arms, torso, and legs, and they lit her on fire. She fell into shock, and they thought that she was just pretending to die, but she was actually dead. So they filled this huge drum with cement and shoved her body down there. Then they disposed of her somewhere in Tokyo. While being questioned about a different case, one of the boys thought that they were talking about Junko, and he quickly admitted to everything and told the police where her body was and all the horrible things that they did to her. The time they got was very short. I believe the highest one of the boys received was 20, and the rest of the boys were sentenced below that. So they're now all in their mid-30s.
Did you all know that one of the actors in Austin Powers is currently serving a life sentence for murder in blank?
Smashing idea, baby. Yeah.
This is Joe's son, and on Christmas of 1990, he and one of his friends committed one of the most brutal rapes I've ever heard about in my life. A woman who publicly goes by the name of Victoria had just finished up being at a friend's house where they had gone around looking at all the Christmas lights in the neighborhood with her dog. As she got out of her car, she put her dog Jessie inside of her coat, and two men cornered her and attacked her. Her dog Jessie fought back and bit one of the men, startling them, and Victoria threw Jessie into the bushes to try to keep her safe. Victoria then ran, but unfortunately one of the men caught her by the hair and threw her into the car, kidnapping her and taking her to a beach where they violently assaulted her for hours. Joe's son saying to her at one point, "Bitch, you're gonna die tonight. I'm going to fucking kill you." According to Victoria, he was the ringleader of the assault. She thinks the only thing that saved her that night was one of her friends had just had a baby, and she had the photo of the baby in her wallet, and she told the two men that that was her kid and she needed to go home and take care of him. She thinks they must have believed this lie because soon they threw her out on the ground and they were making her crawl away. Joe then got down on her level, gun pointed to her head, and said, "By the way, bitch, Merry fucking Christmas. Run." She ran, making it to a nearby house just clad in a jacket and her pants wrapped around her eyes. The police were called and investigators actually took Victoria back to her apartment where they searched for evidence while she searched for her dog Jessie. Miraculously, Victoria found her dog Jessie. She was safe, and she said that the investigators were jumping up and down when she found her dog and crying tears of joy, saying, "She found her, she found her." And Victoria was safe too, but her injuries were severe. She had a dislocated shoulder. The majority of her teeth were extremely loose because she'd been held at gunpoint all evening and the gun had been shoved violently into her mouth several times. Part of her jaw was unhinged and she had lost partial hearing. And one of the articles that I read said that Victoria actually had to relearn how to walk. At that point, investigators actually thought that this was going to be a quick case to solve. They had the DNA samples of 2 perpetrators that had been found on Victoria's person and on her jacket, but it would take 18 years to figure out who had done this. Because of a plea deal concerning a vandalism charge, they actually got Joe's son's DNA and ran it, and it came up as a match for this attack. And after Victoria had been able to identify him in a photo lineup that investigators had sent her, she was furious. She said she ran over to her rack by her TV and pulled out the movie Austin Powers and destroyed it. She couldn't believe that after all this time, after all this trauma that she had had to go through, that this man, unknown to her, had been in her home the entire time. And soon there would be another DNA match for a man named Santiago Gaetan. So police finally had their 2 perpetrators in custody, but guess what? The statute of limitations had run out on kidnapping and rape, meaning that these 2 dangerous offenders could have possibly gotten off scot-free. But thankfully, investigators had something else up their sleeve. So after 18 years of looking for them, police finally had these 2 dangerous offenders in custody for the rape and kidnap of Victoria. But because it had been 18 years, the statute of limitations had run out on raping and kidnapping someone. Which, such a side rant, but those are some very serious charges to have a statute of limitations on, California. Anyways, obviously some laws need to change. Anyways, so in order for these men to not get off completely scot-free from this heinous crime that they committed, investigators charged them with torture. With torture, they both could have received a life sentence. Now, Santiago actually took a plea deal. So in 2011, he was sentenced to 17 years, so he's most likely going to get out of jail soon. But Joe's son decided he wanted to go to trial. And during trial, he decided that he didn't want to testify. But that didn't stop him from causing a disturbance in court, screaming out things like, "You're lying," or "She's making that up." Just a really great guy. Anyways, in the end, Joe's son would receive a sentence of 7 years to life, which I actually had to look that up. And it meant that in 7 years, he could apply for parole, whether he receives that or not. But wait, it gets crazier. Only a month into his life sentence, Joe murdered his cellmate. And because of his prior charges, this meant that in California, he could possibly face the death penalty. However, after they met with both of the victims' families, they decided not to go for the death penalty, and Joe is actually now serving another 27-year sentence on top of his 7 to life. So most likely, hopefully, he won't be out of jail. Honestly, I don't think either of these men should be allowed out of jail. I really wouldn't be surprised given how brutal the attack on Victoria was if both of these men had reoffended and we just don't know about it. As to why Joe beat his cellmate to death, he said that he had told the officers he needed out of that cell. And he blamed his cellmate's blank watch on that. As for what happened to his first victim, Victoria, there is an episode of 48 Hours Live to Tell based on her. So you can hear more on her story there, but she did say in it that she did get married, she had babies, but she also said she suffers daily from the trauma that those 2 men put her through. I just couldn't even imagine. But for now, we're at the end of another true crime and there's someone that needs our help. This is Ashley Espinoza Sanchez. She went missing on Saturday night around 11:35 p.m. at Miami's Rolling Loud Music Festival. She was last seen wearing a black and red striped romper, and her shoes were white Vans. She had handed her cell phone and her wallet to a friend before wandering off and getting lost in the crowd. According to the TikTok page that her friend set up for her, she was last spotted with a medic where she was telling him she thought she had been drugged. And according to the witness that saw her with the medic, she suddenly got a burst of energy and ran out the emergency exit doors. She has not been seen since. There has been a police report filed. If you have any information at all concerning Ashley's whereabouts, please contact the Miami Garden Police Department at the number on the screen.